The most interesting thing with this lens is that it is the most perfect lens I have ever tested, and it's a 24-70. Now look, I know there's a lot of reviews out there when it comes to this lens, but I am actually going to be coming from more of a videography sort of standpoint, because you guys know I shoot a lot of videos and only partial photos. So we're going to be testing this in a whole bunch of different situations where it's going to be video focused and a few stills. So yes, I am a little bit late to the party, but Nikon did release the 24-70 f2.8 Mark II lens. Now this thing is absolutely incredible, and there's a ton of features that this lens actually has that we do have to talk about. But firstly, we have to talk about the internal zoom. Now, when it comes to the internal zooms, this is something I'm not really used to, especially with my Sony lens. Now, that does externally zoom, so there is that potential where dust could get in, but generally, they are weatherproofed. But it is really nice that the Nikon version does internally zoom, which we did actually see in the Nikkor 24-70 Mark I, that did externally zoom. So it is really nice that they actually made this an internal zoomed lens. And overall, compared to the Mark I, it actually is a little bit larger, but if you externally zoom the Mark I, this is where the Mark II is smaller overall. Now, when it comes to the internal zooms, if you are a person that uses gimbals quite a lot, this is going to be super advantageous because it's not going to be throwing out the weight of your gimbal, because it does actually have that internal zoom. And these kind of internal zoom lenses are extremely useful on these gimbals, so you don't have to fully rebalance the gimbal if the gimbal's not powerful enough. And obviously having a zoom lens, this is going to give you so much more versatility in a lot of shoots to change and reframe your composition. Now, the original lens came in at 805 grams, whereas this new Mark II is 675 grams. Like, that may not sound too much of a difference when it comes to the overall weight, like it's 125 grams, but over a long period of time, if you are, putting this on a lanyard, if you've got two cameras and a wedding, this is going to make a big difference in the overall fatigue of yourself and handling it. And obviously just having lighter gear generally is better for most people. Now, when it comes to size of lenses and cameras, I prefer heavy. Doesn't really worry me, but I know there's a lot of people out there that do appreciate it being lighter. Now, when it comes to the 24-70 millimeters in terms of the focal range, this is one of those lenses where you can put it in pretty much any kind of situation and it's going to be performing really well. Obviously, 24 millimeters is wide enough in most situations, and the 70 mil is quite telephoto in most of those situations where you need a telephoto lens. And that is one of the main reasons why I bought the 24-70 in the Sony range, because it pretty much does absolutely everything. It's a great travel lens, it's a great behind the scenes lens, but it also is really good for professional work when it comes to wedding photography and videography, commercial work, corporate work, podcasts. There's a whole bunch of different situations this is going to be perfect for. And that's one of the main reasons why you would get a 24-70, because potentially this could replace 3 different focal lengths, or at least 3 of the main focal lengths, which is your 24, 35, and 50 millimeter focal lengths. And you pretty much have it in just one lens rather than carrying around 3 different lenses. And that's why I actually made a video recently on my travel kit that was literally just one camera and one lens, and it was the 24-70 lens. So let's talk about the image quality of this lens. Now, this is probably one of the easiest image quality chart tests I've ever done, because at 24 millimeters, if you go directly into the center, it is absolutely tack sharp, high contrast, go out to the edges, and it's pretty much the same. Center to edge sharpness is incredible at 24 millimeters. You even go to 35, 50, and 70 millimeters, it's pretty much the same. The image quality in this thing is absolutely phenomenal from the center out to the edges. And if you want a tack sharp lens, this definitely is it. Then if we try and have a look at longitudinal chromatic aberrations, there pretty much is none at 24, 35, 50, and 75 millimeter focal lengths, and regular chromatic aberrations with the contrasting edges, there is none. This lens is super clean. And even when it comes to flaring artifacts, I mean, it has such low flaring artifacts, it's absolutely crazy that they can actually do this out of the 24-70. It does seem like it has a little bit more flaring at 24 millimeters and that wider focal length compared to the telephoto length, but the lens performance in this thing is just absolutely insane. So if you are in these kind of situations where you're trying to photograph or film backlit, this could be a really good lens to use, because you don't want the image washing out too much and completely ruining the contrast in your image and making your color grading just an absolute nightmare.
Now, when it comes to chromatic aberrations, as you can see here, high contrasting situations, there just doesn't seem to be any. Now, this image is just converted with a little bit of contrast. There isn't any color grade on top, just so you guys can see that there isn't any green or magenta fringing on the edges. So very well controlled with this lens in those high contrast situations. And similar thing with the longitudinal chromatic aberrations, there doesn't really seem to be any at the full focal length, 24, 35, 50, and 70 mil focal lengths. And look, when it comes to this lens being parfocal, so parfocal essentially means it keeps the same focal plane if you zoom in or zoom out. This seems like it keeps the same focal plane. I've set it to manual focus on the memory card and it's at f2.8 at 24 mil. I zoom out to 70 mil and it seems to keep that same focal plane. So this could potentially be parfocal or at least close to parfocal. So focus breathing, checking out the focus breathing at all focal lengths, there honestly doesn't seem to be any focus breathing whatsoever, which is very impressive because this is internally zoomed as well. So whatever they've done optically, it's pretty much perfect. So just for a bit of reference, at close focusing distance 70 millimeters, you've got 0.33 meters, which is pretty close. And at the 24 millimeter focal length, you have 0.24 meters.
Okay, now we've got to be talking about autofocus in this because this is one thing that I think this really outperforms the original version and really suits these new Nikon bodies.
So I'm going to bring up this scene again because it perfectly shows me going behind objects and you can see on the actual screen itself, the face tracking's there, then the eye tracking goes back onto the subject. It is phenomenal and extremely reliable in these kind of situations. I really wasn't expecting it to be obviously this good, but autofocus performance is super fast on these newer Nikon cameras. And I've been saying this in every single Nikon video that the autofocus is pretty much right up to scratch there with the best. And now we got to talk about the stills, and obviously it's going to be perfectly fine. Autofocus works perfect and optically this lens performs incredible. So you won't have any issues with any kind of stills you're going to be putting this in.
Now, one of the features that wasn't on the Mark I that's on the Mark II is the clickable aperture ring. So now you can actually click it or declick it. Really depends on your personal preference, but a lot of video shooters tend to have it declicked. But I know there's a lot of photographers that like to have that sort of feedback where they can feel that there's a change actually happening. So it's really nice for those kind of people. But also there is 2 function buttons on this, where initially it only had 1 function button.
Now, in terms of this lens being smaller, it does actually have a smaller filter thread. So initially it was 82 millimeters, now it's a 77 millimeter front filter thread.
But I know a lot of people have ND filters that are generally 82 millimeters at the maximum. So all they need to do is have a step down ring to fit it to the 77 millimeter front filter thread. So now what I have noticed when it comes to this actual zoom ring, it is nice and firm, and I know a lot of people like a firm zoom ring. They don't want it to sort of pull too fast, which for me personally, I do prefer the firm zoom rings opposed to that really soft zoom ring.
Now lastly, with the price, you are going to be paying a premium for this lens. It's $2,800 US, but you are paying for the quality. You're paying for the internal zoom, and you're just paying for the overall build of this Nikon lens and for it to perform absolutely incredible paired with your Nikon camera.
Now look, overall this lens is absolutely incredible. Sure, the price is pretty high. You are paying a bit of a premium, but you are paying a bit of a premium for the quality. So if you are a working professional, I mean, this is an absolute no-brainer. It is an absolutely perfect lens. And I mean, even if you aren't a working professional, you love travel photography and videography, it's smaller, it's lighter, it performs much better than the original version. So it kind of is a no-brainer there. I mean, if you do have the original version, you can still sell the original version, get some money back for that, and invest in this lens because this lens is absolutely perfect. So anyway, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, let's get it.